In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw the basic shapes of two-dimensional circles and three-dimensional spheres. Make sure that you have your settings set so that you have a brush on low opacity with a soft edge, pressure sensitivity, and maybe just a little bit of smoothing if your hand isn't so clear. Now, when you create a two-dimensional circle, what you want to do is you want to ghost practice the movement first, and then start off light and then go a little bit harder to be able to get your circle. When you're drawing, try to do smooth actions. Don't draw from your wrist because your wrist is naturally ovular. Draw from your elbow because you have a larger range of movement, and that'll give you more circular circles. The other thing to note is to not do this like little scratchy line to go around it, because you can see that it gets kind of lumpy and it takes a while. Do full round movements and just go over a little bit of the areas that need a little bit more love. Try out some small circles, try out some large circles, try to get a good range, and try to figure out what is the speed that works for you. And if you mess up on any, know that you can always use the eraser tool and erase away ones that are not so great and refix them and go back in. They don't have to be 100% perfect because this is just practice. This is building your hand-eye coordination, and usually it's used for sketches that you're going to eventually paint over. So I'm going to speed up the video here. I want you guys to fill up at least half of this canvas full of circles of varying sizes. And then we'll pause the video again and I'll show you how to make three-dimensional spheres once we have half of this filled out. All right, now that we have half the page filled in with two-dimensional circles and we've kind of warmed up our arm and gotten a hold of how to actually make these curvy things, let's make some three-dimensional spheres. Now, the key to understanding three-dimensional spheres is understanding the rotation of this circle in space. So if I start off with a circle, and I'm going to draw one here, and I'm going to draw it a little bit harder so that you guys can see it rotating. But if I take this circle and I move it down here and transform it, notice that when it starts to, when I start to flatten it, it actually becomes more like an oval. And every time that I do that, you can see that when I transform this again and get it even thinner, it eventually starts getting so thin that it just becomes a line. I'm going to just draw a line because that's easier than just transforming it. But you can see that that'll eventually just kind of make a line. And as it starts to widen up, eventually that ellipse will start to turn more and more like a circle. Until eventually that circle or that ellipse gets all the way back to being a complete circle. And so that's how a circle moves in space. So when I am drawing a sphere, I'm going to draw it in this like lower kind of portion. You can see that I start out with a circle, just as usual, and then I think about my x-axis and my y-axis. And so there's a flat one, and on the opposite side, I'll put another sphere over here. Clean that up a little bit. And I'm going to think about my x-axis and my y-axis again, except this time, when it starts curving to the side and making that ellipse, I can see the front and the back, and we can see that it's looking to the right. And so I'm going to have it look up a little bit. I'm going to create that thin ellipse, and I'm going to make the front side just a little bit darker. So we can see that it's turning and looking in space. Make sure that when you are creating your dimensions within it, that you go all the way to the edges. Because if I only go part way out, it looks like a pretty good, like, I don't know, drawing of an atom, but it does not look like a sphere if I don't go all the way out to the edges. The other thing that I want you to do is I want you to start thinking of dimension. So I'm going to create 2 spheres. Let me see, I need just a little bit more room. So I'm going to move this all the way, move these guys up. There we go. In the top right, I'm going to create 2 spheres. One, I'm going to think about its x-axis and how it turns in space, getting wider and wider, getting the sense of dimension. So this one has a good sense of dimension. And then when I move to the other axis, I'll do that same thing, starting off with a thin ellipse, and then moving to a wider ellipse. And we can see that we have this really complex shape that gives us the sense of dimension. Now I want you guys to do a couple of these so that you get the idea of it having and warping around space. The other kind that you can do is, instead of this one that gravitates out from the center, I'm going to start the same way, where that ellipse is all like coming out from the center, but then thinking of like kind of like rings or wearing like belts around it, kind of like the like a globe. I am going to draw rings all horizontal to each other, making sure that they go all the way out to the edges. And we can see that this one feels a little bit more like a globe, but maybe it's a little bit easier for you to envision that 3-dimensional space. So go ahead and start filling in the other side of your scene, of your canvas, with various spheres. Some of them very simplified, just showing the direction that it's looking at. Some of them you can fill in so that they are these really complex understandings of how the ellipse widens out as it gets further out from the center. And some of them start considering that globe shape that I was talking about, where it's kind of like it's wearing a variety of different rings. Kind of like a basketball or something like that. And if you want to, for this side, since you've already gotten a good practice on creating spheres, you are welcome to create a couple of oblong-shaped things, kind of like these little guys, because there are things that are ovals. But remember to keep in mind how the ellipses are turning in space so that they feel like they have dimension. I wouldn't do any of these super thin ones. So I'm going to speed up the video here, and you can start to, you can watch how I do it and start filling out the rest of your scene. And so there you go. That's how to draw basic shapes. And so there you go. That's how you can draw 2-dimensional circles and 3-dimensional spheres.